G'day legends, in today's video I am going to be turning my attention to moving footage. If you have seen me before, you will know that I'm all about the still image, but every so often I do shoot video clips for some of my commercial clients to go with their stills, and I have also shot some sections for international surf films in the past, but normally my attention isn't really focused on video. For serious video, when I do it, I normally use my EOS R5, but in today's video I am going to go into the settings I use for my GoPro action camera. Last week I posted up a very rough 1-minute clip on my Instagram, and I got a few people asking about what settings I use, so I thought that maybe more of you would like to know, so hence this little video today. The GoPro isn't a super complicated camera, so this tutorial shouldn't take too long, but having said that, if you just go with the factory settings, you may not be pulling the most value out of your equipment. I'm currently using the GoPro 8, and I know that at the time of this video there is a GoPro 10 model, but the theory in this will suit the models older and newer than this one. Okay, so pretty much the only time I really use this camera is when it's mounted on top of my Aquatech housing. Inside the housing I am shooting still images, and that is my main focus for the surf sessions that I do, but I am also picking up some bonus video clips by having this little guy mounted above. As the wave or the surfer approaches, I just hit the shutter button on the GoPro and that begins recording video while I concentrate on taking my still images. It's super cool to have some matching footage to my stills from the day without too much hassle. Now, you may be just shooting with GoPro only, and that's perfectly fine. The same settings will apply for you as well. Just to note, these settings have been what have worked for me. I have been super happy with the quality and the speed, but obviously you can experiment to see what you like the best, and I encourage that you will always try things out for yourself. Now let's get started with how I set up my GoPro for surf action video clips. Okay, so we are in the GoPro, we've got it turned on. But just quickly, I've got a preset that I've named water, and I have already keyed in all the settings for that. As you can see, I've got a few different ones here. This is with the GoPro 8, possibly the ones before, but definitely the ones after. You can set up presets, so it's a go-to one. I can show you the presets, but what I might actually do is make a brand new one. So the way you do that is you can go down to below all your other presets and just push the add. And then what we'll get is the factory settings, so what the GoPro comes with. So the mode is video, yes, that's right. We want to first go into the resolution. So I always set mine at 4K because that's the highest quality that you can get with this camera. The other thing is I set the frame rate. The normal frame rate is 25 frames per second there, but I go double frame rate. I go to 50 frames a second at 4K. Now that gives pretty damn good quality, and you can even crop in with 4K. The reason behind the 50 frames a second is because the video can be slowed down by half. So most of the time with surf action, it's happening very quickly in front of you, and when you're in the water, it's only a split second that the surfer is in range for your shot, so you want to slow that down by at least half. I think half gives a pretty good look for most. You can go out to 100 frames a second. I'll talk about that a bit later, but it will drop your quality down to 2.7K, which is still very good. So I do have a setting there as well. So I've got it set at 4K at 50, so that's your main sort of setting, I suppose. The lens comes into it with this camera. Now, I leave it on just wide. You can go into a slightly less field of view, and what it does is it removes the fisheye effect. So the fisheye effect will give it sort of a bit of a curve, but having said that, it does go wider. The super view is 16mm. It's the widest and tallest field of view, and it's served up at 16:9. I shoot all my videos in 16:9, so I actually like the super view and I keep it in the super view setting. Okay, so then we move on to the stabilization. So with the GoPro 8 and up, possibly the one before, they've got really good stabilization capabilities. You can turn it off and it won't crop your image. When you've got it on, it does crop about 10% of your wide. So it brings it in. So it brings in the sides, brings in the top and the bottom. However, when you're out and surfing, when you're out taking surfing photos and surfing video footage, there is a good chance that your hand won't be as stable as when you're on land. So that stabilization is key for me. I really like it. Then we go into the Protune. So down here, it's got a bit rate that's set on that's set on low, which gives a smaller file size, but the quality isn't as good. So I always, every one of my presets on here, I have the bitrate set high, and it gives better, smoother footage. So we've got that bitrate set on high, so it's going to give us our best quality. The shutter, you can preset the shutter. So if you are shooting it at 50 frames a second, in my DSLR camera, I always double the shutter speed. So you can put it at 100, but for slow motion, it probably doesn't matter as much. Now, if I set it at 100, well then if it's really bright light, it'll only shoot at 100. And if the aperture's fixed at something that's too wide, it may overexpose. That's my thoughts. I don't know the exact mechanics behind these GoPros, but I'm guessing it would. So I actually leave that on auto. So unlike in a DSLR camera where I wouldn't, I leave the shutter in auto. Now this is exposure compensation. This is something I actually do preset. I feel like the GoPros overexpose their videos by about 1 to 1.5 stops. And with overexposure, the whites clip quite severely. So I make sure that I underexpose by about 1 stop to sometimes 1.5 stops. Now this is personal taste, but I like a sort of darker, richer image. The white balance, you can leave this in auto, but the problem with leaving it auto with video is that it can change within your clip. So I generally set this at around 5500K, and that's a good daytime color balance. So most of the time I'm shooting footage in the day. Sometimes it's either end of the day and it's a little bit warmer light, but about 56 to 5500 is typical daytime light. So I actually leave my white balance on 5500, and then even if it doesn't change within your clip in auto white balance will pick up different color balances from when you turn one clip off to the next. So it makes editing a little bit of a nightmare. So I always set my white balance fixed, and you can adjust that for each shoot. ISO minimum, I always take that down to the lowest. ISO maximum, now this one's an interesting one. It can go up to, 3200, which is quite a fast ISO. I actually set it around 800, and the reason is, if it can go up to 3200, because you haven't got a lot of control over GoPros, if it can go up to 3200, it may not need to. I'd rather it slow down the shutter speed. So you saw before that it can shoot at a shutter speed of 1/400th a second. Now, if it wants to retain that 1/400th a second, it might increase the ISO to keep the 400, but I'd rather it drop down to a 1/100th of a second rather than increase the ISO. So I set it around about 800, and that does a pretty good job even in dawn and dusk. I'm not really shooting at night, so this is my setup for water photography, remember? So I'm shooting surf action, which is normally in pretty good light. Next one, pretty much all these I changed. The sharpness is set at high, which straight out of the camera might look good, but you're better off if I think these GoPros do over sharpen a little bit. I find that I prefer it to go right down to the low setting. If I want to sharpen, I can sharpen it later, so I find that gives it better quality. Color grade, so the color grade, well, it's not so much the color grade, but it's a color setting. GoPro have their own one, and it's a corrected profile. I actually put it to flat because I'd rather push the colors and the levels and everything like that myself in Premiere Pro, so that's up to you. You can leave it. If you're just getting clips straight off the camera, you might want to go for the GoPro color profile. It will be more saturated in the GoPro color file, and probably a little bit more contrasty. So instead of editing it in your editing program on the computer, it's sort of trying to do it straight out of the box, so you can just put it straight into your clip. Raw audio, don't worry about. Wind audio, that's all for audio, so I'm not recording any audio when I'm doing this. So yeah, that's a setup. So once you've done all that, you can then name this preset that you've made. So I've got all these names. You can't actually, unfortunately, you can't write it in, say, surf photography or something. You've just got to either choose one of them or just push custom and then say yes, and now you have set your preset. So it's custom. Oh, let's have a look here. Something must have moved on it, because let's just go into edit. It's gone to 25 frames a second. We want it on 50 frames a second. So now it's back to 50 frames a second, and it's done. Custom 1, we've got 4K, 50 frames a second. You just go into edit to check your settings. So 4K, 50 frames a second, wide lens, the hyper smooth stabilizer's on, the bitrate's high, which is important, the shutter is on auto, which I like. The exposure compensation is just to my taste, so that's 1.5 stops under. I wouldn't ever overexpose these GoPros that tend to overexpose themselves. White balance around 5500 Kelvin. ISO minimum's 100, maximum's 800. Sharpness is low, color is flat for me, and that's how I set it up. So there's a few crucial things in there. That high bit, make sure that you've got that high bit on. Make sure you're shooting in 4K, because why not? That's the best the camera can do. And yeah, you're set to go. So that's how I set up my GoPro camera, and you can see that I've got all sorts of settings here. I've also got a setting for super fast slow-mo, so I've called it slow-mo. You go into the settings here, just show you. So when I really want to slow down something, and this is great for surf photography too, you might want to reduce your image quality to 2.7K, but you get 100 frames a second. So then it's slowed down by double again. So you're doubling it, you're slowing down by half at 50 frames a second, and then another half again at 100. So it's nice and slow motion. So that's a cool setting as well. Another thing that is super crucial to my workflow anyway is having this little quick capture on. So that's a quick capture offer at the moment. It's a little picture of a rabbit type thing. And as long as that's blue and activated, I am able to just start the camera with a quick click of the button. So I'll just turn off the camera, and whatever mode you were in last, so at the moment I was in my custom mode, I can click the camera on by just one click. So as the surfer looks like they're going to take off on a wave, I click this top button, and within a couple of seconds it starts recording. So it's recording the surfer coming towards me, and then once the shots have been taken and I've got on the wave myself, I can quickly hit the button again and it turns the camera off. This way it saves batteries and it saves the camera from getting hot, which can sometimes save you from getting fogging. So rather than having the camera on the whole time and running out of batteries, I use this quick capture mode. Another thing I do is I have this lock on. So if the screen locks off, well then when you turn it on, if you bump anything on the screen, so if I bump anything like change it from wide to a different lens, or I touch the setting I want, or even worse still, change over to photo when I'm thinking I'm in video, well then, yeah, obviously that's not very good. So if you have the screen locked, well then to make any changes, you have to physically swipe down, tap to unlock, and then change over. You don't really make, once you go out there, I find that, you know, you've got your custom setup, so you're going to be shooting there all the time. So what I find is once you've got your custom setup happening, you don't want to play with it too much. All you want to do is turn this button on, turn it off, and get in and out, get the clips, and it's done. So pretty basic. Hopefully I didn't leave too much out there, but that's how I set up my settings for the GoPro 8. The quality of these little things are really quite amazing. The video anyway. I have seen some quality stills off them too, but for the tiny sensor size, the dynamic range is fairly poor compared to a full frame digital camera. However, video is really astounding for its size, and add that really good stabilization system to it, and the potential of these little cameras is pretty impressive. I have shot with these on top of my Aquatech housing for many years. My first GoPro was the Model 4, and I got some footage that was used in a short film that was run before a big film, John Florence film. I think it was called A Blue Moon, or View from Blue Moon. Anyway, I remember sitting in the picture theatre shitting myself thinking, how's this going to look on a massive screen? Some of the footage was actually shot at 120 frames per second, which I think made the quality setting around 720p with that older model, because it was a few years back now. Before that night, I'd only ever seen it on my Mac, but I was so surprised when the footage came up and it actually looked pretty good. From that moment on, I knew that if there was decent light, the GoPro video would perform to a fairly reasonable standard. Now with the GoPro 8 and the 10 now available, the quality has been improved so much further. If I was a video guy instead of a stills guy, I would use my Canon cameras for video, but be known that if you get good quality light, use decent settings, then you will get a result that fits alongside almost all of the bigger cameras. Not saying it matches them, but they are pretty decent. If you do shoot stills in the water, I would consider teaming it up with a GoPro to get some bonus moving footage. Aquatech sells this metal mount that fits on top of your housing for about $50 Australian, less in US dollars. I don't have a discount for GoPros, but if you are in the market for a new water housing for your DSLR or mirrorless camera, you can use my unique code word AF-TOMWoods AUS to get 10% off their entire range. I also have a free 40-minute training on surf and water photography. If this is something that interests you, I'll put that link in the description below so you can take advantage of that. Anyway, that wraps up another installment from our Dream Life Through Photography channel. Please comment below with any questions or suggestions on your experience with shooting surf videos with a GoPro. Cheers legends, and we'll catch you next time.